Hello, my name is Edrem, and this time we've got a little bit of a react video to do, right? It's a bit of an old one, bit of a classic, but I wanted to do a react, partially because I'm constantly memeing on this video in my live streams, which by the way I live stream on twitch.tv /Edrem, but also because I kind of wanted to see how things have changed since Dawn Trail, right? How things have changed since this video talking about the downfall of FF14 from Endwalker, which was already hilarious when it was released because it's about, well, it's from a player that hasn't played Endwalker, which is just immediately is funny. That's like me reviewing a game based on watching a streamer play it, right? It's not going to go well. And so he gets many things wrong in the video, and also misinterprets a lot of things, right? Takes like the worst interpretation of stuff, which is just, you know, we've seen that a lot in the community lately. A lot in the community do that. So I kind of wanted to go over the video. Anyway, here we go.
Hello everyone, I was Lynx Camelli. For the first time in recorded history, Final Fantasy XIV.
So immediately I already know he's wrong. Not the first time in recorded history. Oh, no. No, he didn't play in Heavensward, right? He didn't play old Diadem. He didn't play the old systems. It's like, no. He has not been... He doesn't know, right? There's always been drama about the game over time. In fact, the Shadowbringers Endwalker was like a smooth period where there just wasn't as much drama. Well, Endwalker, there still was at the end, but there's always been this stuff. There's a reason old Diadem doesn't exist in the game anymore.
Is currently going through a bit of a rocky period. Although I no longer play the game, I loved FF14 like no other game I had ever played. I've put in over 12,000 hours in the 6 years that I played.
I want to do some quick math on this. Hold up. Because I think I'm approaching 12,000 hours, but I've been playing since ARR. So hold up. 12, 2, 7, 8. Divided over 6 years, right? So a little over 2,000 hours per year. We talk about that in days. That's 85 days out of the year. 23%. Okay, so 23% of any year he was playing Final Fantasy. And you can get that even worse, right? So let's say like waking hours. Let's say he sleeps 8 hours every day, so it's got 16 hours awake. 5, 8, 4, 2046 divided by that. That's 35% of all your waking time for 6 years is playing Final Fantasy XIV. That's too much time for anyone. That's just too much time in general. Go play other games. I mean, he is playing other games now, so that's nice, but should have done that earlier.
And I've seen the game transform over time from a highly creative niche substitute for World of Warcraft to an unrecognizable mess of oversimplification and lack of creativity. The opinions and ideas I will present in this video are feelings I have had for a very long time, much before I stopped playing the game, but I never felt comfortable sharing these feelings because FF14 has a critical issue. You, or more appropriately, the FF14 community. It's no secret that a large amount of 14 players are die-hard lovers that will not accept any criticism or negativity towards their perfect game. Whenever someone brings up a problem they have with the game, they have to keep adding disclaimers that everything is fine out of fear of invoking the wrath of the FF lovers.
This is such a waste of potential because this dungeon could probably be badass, but instead they're going to make it brain dead easy to cater to casuals, and that's fine. That's fine. A vast majority of their content is so that anybody can do it. And while that's good, and I'm not saying that they should take it away, they need to add some stuff that is a little harder, that not everybody can do it. I'm not saying they need to,
However,
I think it's hilarious is like that expansion we got Criterion, which is kind of is that. But also I think this is what some creators are doing, is you have to do this because people always interpret the worst possible versions of what you're saying, right? Like, look at what Yoshi P says versus what people say he says online. It's just, there's so much in this community where, like, everyone just wants to misinterpret everything. So you do have to be very specific about what you're talking about. Because otherwise people are going to be like, oh, fuck, why do you hate waffles? right? It's a whole thing. But yeah, it's an unfortunate reality, but it's not necessarily the criticism of the game, because we certainly have that now, right? There's certainly a lot of that in Dawn Trail. But even then, you're still getting a lot of misinterpreted things about it. It's just in general, people have low reading comprehension skills now. Low comprehension skills in anything to interpret what people say. It's terrible. And this video does it as well. Really badly.
Community sentiment seems to be declining for the first time in ever. I mean, Zepla, FF14's beacon of positivity and happiness.
I don't think she's been a beacon of positivity and happiness ever since the fucking Hogwarts drama, right? That was a fucking stupid decision. Like, oh, I know this game pisses off people. I want to piss people off. I'm gonna stream this game. Like, what the fuck did you think was gonna happen? But I mean, hey, if we're looking at this like a video as a retrospective, like, oh yeah, she's gone even worse in Dawn Trail. She's gone even worse into just hating everything, right? And also does this as well, misinterpreting everything that happens.
Released a 36-minute video going over all of her issues with FF14's current expansion and larger core issues with the game as a whole. Now, this was surprising. I mean, that's like a WoW player saying World of Warcraft is actually a good game. Like, that is beyond controversial. And yet, it seemed to go over well, with a large amount of people agreeing and seeing through the Yoshi P indoctrination, criticizing the game for its legitimate shortcomings. So clearly, things are changing. Hence, me finally feeling comfortable to talk candidly about a game.
Can I say, I just noticed this because I'm like, yo, DPS meters, but also, oh man, do you remember the old party buffs when they didn't have the timers on it? I'm like, when is the damage down gonna fall off there? Like, we don't know. We just don't know.
I used to love and genuinely want to see succeed. I'll be bringing up 4 main topics in this video. However, I won't be discussing the story since I'm a story skipper, so I don't have much to say on that. And it does seem to be one of the last remaining good parts.
I think that's kind of the funny part. It's like, yeah, you've got this many hours in the game, you've never bothered to go through the story. Like, just raiding. This is just what this guy does. Probably doesn't even craft. Probably doesn't even do ocean fishing.
Parts of FF14. Oh. Topic 1. The formula is breaking down. For anyone that has played FF14 for longer than one expansion, we all know that this game operates on an extremely strict by-the-books formula with 0 surprises. Every expansion has 3 Savage Raid tiers, 3 Alliance raids, 2 trial bosses at launch, and a new one every major patch, accompanied with a new dungeon. I mean, there is 0 room for going above and beyond.
I think what's funny about that is he said with 7 raid bosses. He quit in Shadowbringers. Shadowbringers had 8, I believe. Because they added in Memoria Misera as a bonus one. Alright. So it's like, already his pattern is off there. his pattern is off. The dungeons, though, that's just all over the place. Although, then again, it's like, do you count variants as dungeons now? Do you or don't you? Stormblood had a deep dungeon as well. Shadowbringers did not. Endwalker does have a deep dungeon, but it has no field exploration.
New dungeon. I mean, there is 0 room for going above and beyond. Just stick to what has always been delivered. And people are just simply getting tired of it. There is definitely value in knowing what you'll be getting when you pay for an expansion. I mean, if any of you have been paying attention to Destiny 2, that game is a complete RNG loot box of what you'll get when you pay for an expansion. However, the downside to being extremely formulaic is you lose the ability to excite people. No longer am I sitting at the edge of my seat watching every live letter stream theorizing with my friends.
I mean, to be fair, for him, he would only care about the rating stuff anyway. But I mean, there's still surprises. And there's still things to get excited for. Like, hey, we're getting a new limited job this expansion in Dawn Trail. We haven't had that since Stormblood. That's exciting, but it's also one of those things where, like, what do you want? Do you just want new things to be constantly announced? Do you just want them to constantly throw new things at you? World of Warcraft used to do that. But like, let's just try a random ass new thing for an expansion and then just completely forget about it later. Do you want that? Some people just want the novelty of new things. And I think that's fine, but it's also not what you should expect out of this game.
friends on what they'll announce next, I know what's coming. Another 24-man raid, one new dungeon, a new trial boss, another 4 bosses in the Savage tier. Except actually, the final boss of the Savage tier is 2 fights that are half finished to form a 5-boss raid tier. Pfft, whoa, dude! What if they just made 1 fight that was fully complete? Okay, sorry, that's besides the point.
I think this is funny when he's currently showing Shiva Savage on stream, a final raid tier boss that doesn't have a phase 2. Right? Again, he quit in Shadowbringers. Titan Savage did not have a phase 2 checkpoint. Shiva did not have a stage 2 checkpoint. It was only until E12S where we actually got the stage 2 checkpoint. Endwalker is a bit more on the nose about that, but again, you didn't play Endwalker. And Dawn Trail has been pretty good about that so far. We've only got Arcadion tier 1 as of this video, but there was no checkpoint boss on it. Also, doesn't necessarily... It's not that necessarily of a problem, right, to have a checkpoint. It really depends on the fight. There is very good fights with checkpoints. But yeah.
Off my rocker there. The point is, veteran players that have been around for a few cycles of the 14 formula are just getting burnt out. And what's strange about this is Final Fantasy XIV has grown immensely. I mean, the population...
Okay. I should say, I could make a whole video about this, because I think this is one of the biggest things that people get wrong about this game. Is a huge part of this, I'm pretty sure, based on the dates, that would be the Endwalker release. That would be Shadowbringers, and that's when we had the big WoW exodus along with COVID, right? I think a lot of people attribute the player-based gain to WoW. Not enough people attribute it to COVID. COVID was absolutely huge for online services. Huge. Like, even Twitch massively grew. I think Mixer shut down during COVID because they were one of the few streaming services that for some reason had no increase in viewership when everyone was stuck home. But a big problem we saw with this is a lot of companies wanted to try and capitalize on it, so they started rapidly increasing the amount of expenditure they do, right? They started doing hiring sprees. They started spending big to try to take advantage of COVID numbers. And then once COVID fell off, we've had mass layoffs, right? Like 2023, 2024 had massive amounts of layoffs in the industry. There was a whole thing about how game devs are like, you just need to survive to the end of the year. Because then we had the fall off from COVID. And it's like, you should FF14 have spent money based on the amount of players it gained? Yes, but also, would they be okay with letting go of staff afterwards? Like, would they be okay with, oh, okay, the numbers have fallen off now we need to fire half our staff? Like, I don't really think that's a good way to do it. Certainly not a way that Japanese companies want to run. Right? Firing staff is a big no-no there. And it's like, okay, they haven't taken full advantage of COVID, yes, but they haven't been as negatively affected by it. From what I understand, I don't think Square Enix has done any layoffs post-COVID, which is quite a rare thing if you look at the amount of companies that have done it.
The popularity of this game has only gone up over time, which obviously means way more revenue, and yet, what's to show for it? In fact, some of you might not know this, but in Heavensward, we actually got 2 dungeons per patch. We've steadily been getting less dungeons with every...
Alright, so this is one of those things where you kind of got to put a little asterisk on this, right? Is that the 2 dungeons were 1 new dungeon, and then 1 dungeon that's just the old assets, but we've retooled it, right? Like, it wasn't that much effort to make these hard versions of dungeons because there are already things that are in the game. They just change things around so much. So it's like, how much time is that? I remember they did say during Shadowbringers they wanted to focus more onto doing trials and content like that. Right? Because the amount of time spent on doing these optional dungeons for the amount of time people actually do them is very, very little. And it's true. I do a lot of mental roulettes And the amount of times I actually get any of the optional dungeons here is almost never. Because if they're optional, very few people will ever go and unlock them. Right? Never reap Fractal Continuum. It's been years since I've gotten the Fractal Continuum in Mentor Roulette. Years! It's such a shame because I really enjoy the twinning, but it's an optional dungeon. So it's like, it never pops. Just never pops. That's why I kind of like a little bit in Endwalker with the Stigma Dreamscape is that they made that required for one of the allied societies. So at least there's like there's a bigger incentive to do this dungeon. But still, Stigma Dreamscape and Smarleton are optional. And I haven't gotten Smarleton in a long time.
Expansion because you know what Square Enix does? Instead of investing the increased revenue to grow the game, they only ever move development to different pieces of content, never increasing the overall amount of content. The mystical question everybody's had this expansion is, where is Endwalker?
They have in Dawn Trail, because we've just gotten Chaotic, and that's been awesome. Chaotic's been great. We're also getting more Criterions, more field exploration, Eureka Bosja. More, just a lot of things. A lot of things. I can kind of understand of like, it's taken some time to scale up, but this shit can take a long time. Like we know that Dawn Trail would have already have been started planning out by 6.1. Right? That's when they would have already have started to work on Dawn Trail. Some of these things need to be done much, much, much in advance. I think this is one of those things where people think content takes 4 months to make. It's like, no, it probably takes closer to 8 months. They have multiple teams working on multiple slices of patches at a time. So this stuff needs to be done well in advance. And already, we're in patch 7.18 at the moment. There would already have been started to work out on 8.0. Because we know that as well. In December, Yoshi said he already had to figure out what he wanted for the cinematic for 8.0, because that needs to be scheduled well ahead of time with the studio part of Square Enix that does CGI cinematics.
Walker's Eureka and Bosja equivalent? Well, it's called Criterion Dungeons.
Yeah.
No Ishgardian Restoration equivalent.
So this is another thing that we're like, he cancels out his own point, right? He talks about how there's nothing that surprises them, but it's like Variant and Criterion were a surprise. I mean, yeah, you could make the case of like, oh, it sucks that we didn't get a field exploration, but Variant and Criterion were really new content, really interesting content. The reward structure kind of sucked until Allo Criterion, but I do love the weapons you get from Allo now. But they were brand new, interesting content that's very different from what we've had before.
Equivalent
and for the people that like it, it's great.
Yes, there is. It's called Island Sanctuary. Less dungeons.
It's also another thing where I see people like, they're not innovating enough. They're not trying new things. It's like, part of trying new things is failing. Right? Part of trying new things is, let's put something out there and see if people actually like it. And Island Sanctuary was new. I know a lot of people don't like it. That's fine, right? A lot of people say they want shield content in this game, and they really don't. They want to be able to min-max everything, right? Because that's just what MMO players want to do for everything. I see it so much. But like they did try new content. They did try something interesting and different. It doesn't always work, but that's part of the thing with innovating. And you can't just do innovating everything, because then you would turn people off that actually want the same stuff we had before, right? You got to do it slowly.
And Stormblood onwards, well, that's to make way for ultimate raids. You see, despite FF14 exploding in popularity and the cash shop overflowing with overpriced garbage to milk the player base, Square Enix has never added content to the game, only replaced.
Okay, yeah, the store is a little bit overpriced. It is a little bit. Although this one of those things where like we get this, like, I look over at World of Warcraft selling the $90 mount, and I'm like, at least we're not that bad. Right? At least we're not that bad. At least there's no, like, actual benefits to buying things from the store, except for that one Fenrir mount that makes you go a bit faster. As long as at least everything is cosmetic and we're not buying features like we are in WoW. But I do agree it could be a lot better. Could be a lot better.
Content. And this formula is just getting stale. Do I really want to spend $15 a month just to do another 24-man raid that is exactly like the ones that came before it? Topic 2.
Okay. This is something I actually do see a lot more now as well in Dawntrail, is people keep trying to justify like the price of the subscription, right? People keep being like, are we actually getting our money's worth for the monthly sub that we pay? The sub that you pay is not for the content in the patches. Just straight up gonna say that, okay? It's not for that. It's not for that. It's for the ability to play the game online with people. That's what it is. If you didn't sub to the game and you come back a year later, guess what? You still get access to the content in the patches. What actually funds the content is the expansion. That's why if you don't buy the expansion, you don't get access to those patches. That's how it's done, right? The subscription fee is basically like just a price of entry to play an online game. It's not meant to be like a justification of, oh, they've only added this many hours of content into the game. Because if you go down that path where you want hours of content, that just means grind. That just means games are going to add more and more and more grind, right? To try and satiate the people who want lots and lots of content. And I saw this with Endwalker, and it annoyed me then, it's still annoying me now, is that people, when the variant dungeons came out, people started using guides to clear them as fast as possible, because again, MMO players want to min-max everything. And then they complained about how little content there was. They're like, oh, there's only 4 hours of content in this patch. And it's like, oh, well, okay, yeah, but you used a guide to completely solve all the puzzles in variant. Like, why are you doing that? Why are you using a guide? Like, I understand if you just want to do this content, you like, I don't care too much about the puzzle aspect. But then to complain about it afterwards confuses me so much. I think as well, and this is probably where a lot of division has come from, at least in raiding in Endwalker, is that PvP became a bigger focus. And people don't consider that to be content, right? Even like, this video does not talk about PvP at all. The Zeppler video basically glosses over the amount of work that's done in PvP. It's like, no, PvP is actually a much bigger part of the game now. It's not the meme that it used to be with Feast. And if you want the grind per patch, there you go. There you go. Get rank 25 in each of the series for each of the patches. Heaps of content. Again, people are like, if it's not the content I like, I'm not going to even consider that it exists. Just like how so many people are like, crafting and gathering doesn't exist to me, right? So no matter what, it's not content. Endwalker had a relic grind. Guess what? It was for the crafters. It was actually pretty good. But there you go.
Repetition breeds apathy. Beyond just sticking to the formula for content releases, FF14 has also lost all creativity when it comes to encounter design, which was arguably FF14's greatest.
Again, I just wanna remind people of this. He didn't play Endwalker, right? He didn't play Endwalker. But he's reviewing it as if like he's reviewing this at the time of Endwalker. And this is the upcoming part that gets memed on so much.
Strength outside of the story for years. In fact, one of my most popular videos on this channel is me selling the game to WoW players on how great the boss encounters are. But again, for those of us that have been around for a while, we have started to see the utter lack of innovation when it comes to boss design, even in the ultimate fights. Every mechanic is just a random combination of group stacks, prey markers, tether grabbing, limit cut, tower soaking, or God forbid, clock spots. I mean, it's all been done before.
I mean, it has been done, but it's always done in some interesting new way, right? Like, they're always mixing things in with other things. It's one of those things where I'm like, what do you actually want? Like, what new, completely new, never before seen mechanic would you want them to put into the game?
There is no interesting new mechanics that challenge your gameplay ability. If you're a veteran player or no one, tell me if this sounds familiar to you. Oh, this mechanic is like this other mechanic in that other boss. Every boss is just a reskin of mechanics used in previous fights over.
Okay, I mean, all he's showing here is stack markers. Like, all he's showing here is stack attacks.
Over and over. All you have to do when learning a new Final Fantasy XIV boss is find the safe spot.
Oh shit, yo, he's got Ubu up. Oh yeah.
Because do you know what every FF14 mechanic in existence is? Stand and let thing resolve. Seriously?
This is the bit that I like love to meme on the community. In every game we play, we're like, stand still and let things resolve. Trying to do this. Or every time we get a mechanic in 14 that absolutely cannot be resolved by standing still and let resolve, we're like, shit, why can't we stand still and let things resolve? And this is also, like, when I first watched this video, I almost thought it was parody. Because he lists off all these things here, and he doesn't list off Acceleration Bomb or Pyretic. The actual two big mechanics in this game that are actually just purely stand still and let things resolve. Like, why is that not listed in here? Or, you know, stillness from T. He doesn't list them. He lists other common mechanics that like, so many other games are doing. WoW has it as well. Many games have it. Guild Wars 2 has many of these mechanics. Doesn't list a whole bunch of things like, what about tethers? What about player tethers? Right? It's like, you can't stand still and let those resolve. No, you gotta run away from each other. You gotta do a whole bunch of things. It's a whole bunch of things. It's just one of those things of like, it's just reducing the game down to a really, really, really basic level that ignores all the actual complexities of it.
Honestly, when I had this realization is when I lost all interest in FF14 encounter design. Stand and let thing resolve. That is every mechanic. There is no innovation to the gameplay.
I also want to mention, yeah, because he didn't play Endwalker, he wouldn't have seen DSR or top. I mean, he has seen it, because I know he references a little bit in this video. Incorrectly, by the way. But it's like, those are some of the best raids. To be fair, part of top is stand still and let things resolve, like phase 5, but there's a lot more to it.
Just simply a new twist on stand and let thing resolve. Where other MMOs have moving...
Yo, look, it's Preach. Yeah, I do work for his channel. So, see, this is a simple one, right? Because all he has to do is he needs to get here, and then he can stand still and let things resolve.
Platforms that require careful jumping, boss attacks that can be countered, which dynamic...
Okay, see, this boss here... So, hold on, I'll let him finish.
Dynamically changes the fight every pull.
You're not sometimes countering this boss. This boss is a, you better counter them or you're dead, right? Like, so often it's like, oh, you know, want more things to do in a fight. It's like, but you're going to find the most min-max way to do it. You're going to find the strat that universally works, that everyone's going to do, and then you're going to agree to all do it. Like, that's the thing in FF14. Because FF14 is, yeah, more of a dance than World of Warcraft. In World of Warcraft, you're going to listen to whatever weak auras tell you to do. In 14, it's like you've got the strat, you've got the plan, you make adjustments based on how the mechanics is going to go out a little bit, but everyone needs to be on the same page for the dance. Otherwise, you're going to step on each other's toes and kill each other.
Or using height and gravity to create fun moments.
I mean, fun moments. It's also downtime, right? It's also like, why can't I attack during this? Why can't I do that?
All FF14 has is stand and let thing resolve. Grab the tether and let it resolve. Go to clock spots and let it resolve. Hide behind the...
I mean, to be fair, for the tether, for that top tether, you have to find the correct spot. And let me tell you, as someone that's done a lot of top prog, program loop is a deceptive mechanic for how easily it kills people, right? Because you're trying to do all this without accidentally passing a tether to the wrong player. while also figuring out which tower you need to stand in. It's not that hard of a mechanic, but it does kill a lot of people. But again, just reducing it to stand still and let things resolve, it's like they had to know where to stand. And also for this mechanic, where you need to stand, every single pull is going to change. And it's also going to change depending on who your partner is for the tether. It's a very dynamic mechanic, which is why it's annoying for many players.
Go to clock spots and let it resolve. Hide behind the rock and let it resolve. And this repetition of reusing old mechanics over and over on top of a non-changing gameplay formula leads to apathy. No longer are we challenged and asked to improve our gameplay ability. We are simply tasked with finding the safe spot and standing there until the thing resolves.
I mean, again, this is one of those things that like, what do you mean gaining ability? Finding how to do out the mechanic is the skill. I think so many of this... some of the stuff I've seen with this is people want the game to be more reaction-based, right? As in they think of skill as in the ability to make very, very quick reactions to small things. So moving away from Final Fantasies, like, hey, we have a mechanic, we're setting it up, you need to think about it, then the mechanic goes off. More like an immediate mechanic that you need to resolve. Or very, very short-term things that are very random. Like, that's more World of Warcraft style. And it just wouldn't work well here. And it's also like, if players want that, they can get that from other games. Right? 14's got to do what it does well. And it's just not going to work here. It also makes the game far more ping dependent. As someone in Australia that plays on GP, it was so bad in the past with old mechanics and how the ping worked, right? Like Titan Extreme was just not possible unless you could predict the future with how some of those mechanics worked and how fast they were. Which is why they've moved away from that. And this I think is far better. Far, far better.
And challenge in FF14 has actually been going backwards. The game is not even maintaining the difficulty it used to have, but actually making everything easier and easier.
Again, he didn't play an endwalker, right? So he doesn't know about DSR and top. They're the hardest ultimates. So hard, in fact, that they're like, you know what, let's tone it down a little bit for Fru. Right, the top was a little bit too much. DSR was also a little bit too much for many, but DSR also had some really, really bang good phases. Top, I think, wore out a lot of people in how difficult it was, and how so many mechanics were just, nah, you're dead now. The entire party wiped. It's funny as well, like, yeah, difficulty has gone backwards. No, not really. The Criterions and Criterion Savage have been amazing for 4-man groups. Absolutely amazing. It's one of those things where how do you define difficulty? Like, what do you say is difficult and not difficult? Some people find different things, right? So like going through a low Criterion, I struggle on the Lala boss because everything there is directional rotations and that just scrambles my brain. But other people find that quite easy. So there's different things as well. There's different, what people find difficult about a mechanic might not be the same for all the players, which is why it's very hard to make game design decisions. And I want to do a video on that too.
Topic 3. It wasn't always like this.
It was always
I
like
understand
this.
that I might be coming across as a bitter old man yelling at kids for having fun. I'm only 24, by the way. But trust me, I am.
Okay, I mean, if he's 24, that means he's been playing fucking since 18. Yeah, that's a substantial part of his life. Just if you're playing a shitload of Final Fantasy XIV online, the critically acclaimed MMORPG.
Absolutely despise nostalgia lords who blindly think everything was better in the past.
But also that would have
However,
that also mean, yeah, he would have played World of Warcraft in his teens. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's got a good perspective on games. Also, if that many hours, that probably means he hasn't been exposed to that many other games. Like, that is a lot of just MMOs.
we can empirically say that Final Fantasy has only gotten easier with every expansion. Class design has completely stagnated and lacks any growth at all. I mean...
Okay. So there was something mentioned about this in Shadowbringers, before Shadowbringers actually, because Shadowbringers is the big turning point where many of the jobs were massively changed. Before, you had let's say two graphs of difficulty, right? You've got the job design and you've got the encounter design. The jobs were much harder and deeper and more complex to play. So they were quite harder to play, right? And because of that, the encounter design was quite simple, right? You go back to Stormblood and see any of the mechanics and things that happen in raids. It's like it's actually quite simple compared to anything in Shadowbringers. Like Shadowbringers is a big step. Like people go into Holminster Switch and like, what the hell's going on? There's AoEs all over the place. There's a lot of things going off. Because in Shadowbringers, they were like, we're going to reduce the job design complexity so we can increase the boss design complexity. And this has been part of the reason I think that the game has been really, really popular, is the fact that you get people on the ground floor who, not the most skillful, they can pick up a job relatively easy, right? Because the jobs are easier now. Like old tank stance used to reduce the damage you do. So the idea is you're meant to stance dance, turn tank stance on and off throughout the fight. Enmity used to be a problem where DPS needed to manage that or they just die. Or more precisely, they blame the tank for not having tank stance on the entire time. Right? There was a lot more things. Even back in Heavensward. Heavensward was really bad for this, and ARR. If you don't hit a positional on your combo, guess what? You just don't get your combo now. Like, that's it. Your combo's broken. That's how strict positionals used to be. It's like, yeah, they have been dumbed down, but it's also because there's just certain fights where things go terribly, terribly wrong, right? You kind of have a fight where you're expecting the DPS to always perfectly get their positional, unless you always design fights in a really simplistic manner. So reduce the job complexity, increase the design complexity. That's the way of doing it.
It blew my mind that an actual popular opinion these days is to make combo skills just one button that you spam over and over. Yeah.
Okay. See, this is taken out of context. This is taken horribly out of context. There's no real skill in me pressing 1-2 on my warrior, right? Because there's absolutely no decision making. If I press 1, I'm not going to press 1 again until I press 2. That's it. So the idea there is, hey, let's condense these into one button, and then now we have an extra button slot. We have an extra hotbar slot. We can put some other ability there. We want to condense the actions that we never have to think about anyway to add in new actions. And they did do this to Gunbreaker, right? They did do it if it's big burst combo. Where like, hey, these don't need to be 3 separate buttons because you can never actually click them separately. We're just going to turn them into one combo button because there's no actual choice there. But I think what people have misinterpreted this is they think it means 1, 2, 3. Like, no, it's not the full combo. It's the stuff that never actually goes into anything different. So for Warrior, I go 1, 2, 3, which gives me a surging storm surge, surging tempest buff. And then while that's up, I go 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. And then when the buff is low again, I go 1, 2, 3. Whether or not I do 3 or 4, that's an actual conscious decision I need to make during the fight. Like, oh, do I need this buff up here? Can I let it expire? What's going to happen in the mechanic? So we don't want that to be an auto action. All right, we don't want any smarts in this. We just want it to replace the first 2 buttons because they're always 1, 2. Right? And a lot of people bring up the mod that does this, right? And guess what? The mod only does that as well. It only replaces 1, 2. It doesn't do anything smart. It doesn't even do anything at all for Monk, right? Because we're like, no, there's no way we can auto press the next button for Monk that isn't making some kind of decision about the fight. So it's like, yeah, we don't want to get rid of any of that actual in the moment thought process. We just want to reduce the button bloat. That's it.
Great idea, geniuses. You know, what if we just made every class have one ability called the I win button? Maybe then you could convince yourself you're a...
I need to pay Cookie Clicker again. I got like 7 trillion, 70 sextazillion prestige at one point. I just leave that game running for years and years.
good player. Preach Gaming used to have a philosophy on class design he called moments of glory, where classes were not meant to be jacks of all trades, but instead have moments and encounters where there's...
Again, I think this works in WoW. Not so much in 14, although it can take different forms in 14.
Specific class had an area to really shine and do something special. Where are modern day FF's moments of glory? Pressing Fellcleave 5 times in a row? Yeah, that's real.
Again, he didn't play Endwalker. He doesn't know it's 3 times now. Doesn't know it's 3 times. But I'd say Warrior has small moments of glory. Like the Chaotic Alliance raid. It's probably a good situation where, like, hey, if you're a warrior, you can basically ignore pretty much every single pushback or pull in the Chaotic Alliance raid, World of Darkness, right? Because everything with your inner release gives you knockback immunity, so you can ignore all those mechanics. It's like, you can do that and no other job can. It's like, does that count as a moment of glory, though? Not really a DPS gain. It's just, you get to kind of ignore a mechanic in a certain way.
Interesting and unique. The only class that can even have a moment of glory is Black Mage, which is coincidentally the class that the game director Yoshi P plays, in which they can save up instant
Okay, you know what's funny about this? And I've memed on this a little bit. It's like, okay, yeah, Black Mage can save up their triple cast, right? So this is top phase 3. Or like the transition, right? The funny thing about this is there's a version of this where it's Black Mage relative, where the Black Mage stands completely still. Well, not still, but they stay entirely within their ley lines, and the entire raid adjusts around them for this mechanic. I was like, is it a moment of glory if you do that then? Right? Like, you're doing your ley lines in a way that you get more uptime and everyone has to adjust around you. Is that a moment of glory? Either way, it's also not what he's talking about here, because he's like, oh, you're saving up triple cast so you can do more during that. It's like, no, you want to save triple cast for your ley lines so you can do more damage because it's faster casts. It's just funny because it's like, what do you mean by this? It's also ignoring so many other things. Like, we have just had a recent video of Fru cleared with no healers, which I know there's separate drama about that. But during that, there's a huge amount of effort being done by paladins. Paladins are doing a huge amount of work, and for one mechanic where it's meant to be puddle stacks on the healer, because there is no healer, it can hit anyone in the group. So every paladin is shielding or covering a DPS player. It's like, is that a moment of glory? Because that's something only paladin can do here. Only paladin tanks can actually do this in Fru to clear without healers. Do you consider that? It's like, but no, he wouldn't have that, because paladins already had cover by Shadowbringers and by Endwalker. He knows that ability should exist, but he doesn't consider it to be a moment of glory to be able to use cover. That's the kind of thing of like, he's glossing over so many things, right? It's like, does a red mage being able to mass heal res people in a fight, does that count as a moment of glory? Like, no, because probably at that point you probably just wipe and go again, right? It's like, what actually counts as a moment of glory? You can't just consider DPS to be it.
Procs to do an entire phase of an ultimate fight without ever needing to hardcast a single spell. Now that's really cool! Try and find any other moment of glory on any other class. They don't exist. Bosses that used to require planned movement, careful positioning, and a consideration for your melee DPS's positional skills have devolved into...
Okay, I mean, this one I will get a little bit of credit to. Endwalker hitboxes were quite big. But they've gone back on that, right? If you're comparing this to Dawntrail now, I'm like, okay, they've gotten a lot better about this.
bosses with
Yeah,
hitboxes
I'll
as
give
big
him
as
this
the
one,
arena,
reluctantly.
or the godforsaken wall boss, where
I like wall bosses though. See, this is the one where they take away the complexity from the boss itself to be like, okay, let's have more interesting arena designs. And Endwalker was pretty good about let's have more interesting arenas. Because almost everything before then was like, okay, it's squares or it's a circle room. Endwalker was like, let's do a little bit more interesting, weird designs.
boss movement is literally impossible. You know, I might as well just be punching the air with how little the actual enemy I'm fighting matters in an encounter. Raid buff abilities that used to have varying cooldown lengths requiring planned and coordinated burst time.
Planned and coordinated. No, you were hitting them on cooldown. You were hitting them on cooldown. The thing with this is, with the 2-minute meta, the 2-minute meta used to be the 6-minute meta. That's it. Right? It used to be that everyone lined up their buffs back at 6 minutes. And the only thing you would do is you would pop a potion at 6 minutes, which you still do sometimes anyway if you're potting it. If you're potting at 0 seconds, you pot again at 6 minutes. If you're potting at 2 minutes, you pot at 8. But that's it. It's just, you still use your raid cooldowns on cooldown. You just line them up all again for 6 minutes. There's a bunch of different changes as well that's gone into this, and there's some stuff that's like valid in the community about it. But the actual recast time on these is not the issue at all. Not the issue at all.
To maximize damage on an encounter have devolved.
It has also meant as well, again, with job complexity and raid design, is you can have bosses do certain things now are planned around this. Like, what if the boss is just not targetable 160 seconds into the fight for like 30 seconds? Like, what do you do? Now your battle litany's all off unless you try and rearrange it. And it's like, that sucks for Dragoon only. Right? Or anyone else that has 3-minute cooldown. And they don't want to have to worry too much about balancing things, because when balance gets weird because of raid fights, you get the entire community going, nerf Picto, it's too strong in everything, even though it's actually too strong in the ultimate. It's like, by making everything on the same 2-minute cooldown, they can change the way that bosses are planned because they know that everyone is meant to be using the raid cooldowns at the same time. Now, in my opinion, the raid cooldowns, the raid buffs are too strong, which is another problem. Like, they synchronize too well to make your DPS too high, so you always need to try and pop all of them at the same time with your other party members. But again, that's not connected to the timing of this. It's just it's a whole different problem.
Into every buff skill either having a 60-second or 120-second cooldown, completely removing the planning of burst windows.
Again,
and there's still so much more! The complete irrelevance of enmity.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind Enmity being gone. Enmity was one of those things where it's like, DPS need to manage it themselves, the bastards. Right? DPS dying so much themselves. But again, this is also one of those things where it's like, it's one of those problems where it hit new players a lot, because newbie players were having to deal with this on top of learning everything else about the game. And you can very easily overwhelm them. It's like they move all the complexity further into the high-end stuff, right? They move it out of the jobs into the high-end.
And removal of...
Like, cleric stance on healers, while a cool idea, meant that healers were incentivized to not heal a lot, and led to a lot of other problems.
Tank stances, healers being completely gutted into only having 2 damage skills.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I would like something interesting done with healers. I kind of agree with that. Kind of agree. Although they're in a weird spot where healers, again, like, high-end healers never have to bother about raising people or recovering from emergency too much. But they are designed so that people can play and do that in regular content. It's kind of one of the sacrifices of this. Like, they're designed to be able to help in situations that go wrong. If you design them too much around specific things, shit gets bad. And then you get new players who never want to play healer.
DPS classes having unique and interesting targeted utility skills like Mana Shift and Palace.
Mana Shift. I knew fair mana shift was one of those things where like, yo, you're black mage, just fucking easy. But often this is an emergency thing. You would use this in the case of like someone's dead. We need to raise them, and we need to give them a whole bunch of MP again. That's basically it. And Palisade, nah. I mean, you got Faint Adder, and that's stronger now. Does that count? Probably not.
Say deleted from the game. Conal AoEs that used to require dynamic movement and aiming to.
I mean, I fucking hate the old overpower. Right? The cone just sucked. Because it meant that so many enemies just didn't work well, and so many enemies like weirdly squash around you in different ways. Again, it's one of those things where it's like they just made it a lot easier for newer players to do, because it didn't really matter. High-end players do not give a shit at all about an AoE skill. Right? They're never going to hit it in any of the Savages. So it's fine that they changed this.
The most amount of enemies homogenized into every AoE attack being a circle around your character, so you can't possibly miss an attack. I mean, I could go on forever. Cross-class abilities.
Cross-class abilities. Okay, this might to be a bit of a teaching. So it used to be in the old game, if you, let's say in AR, right? Let's say I wanted to be a black mage. I had to level Thaumaturge to 30, and I had to level Archer to 15. And what happens is your class, like Thaumaturge and Archer, they had cross-class abilities. You see here, like this is Conjurer's ones: Cure, Protect, and Raise. So if you level those classes, you get these abilities, and then you get limited slots where you can slot them in, and you can have those abilities even if you're a different job or a different class. In theory, a cool system that lets you build up your character. In practice, it means that you are missing out unless you put in the effort to grind out the class with the skill that you need. Right? It's not a cool ability, it's a, no, this is required. You must level these classes to get these abilities.
That used to incentivize trying other jobs by leveling them up to borrow a skill for your main job.
It's not incentivizing. Again, it's you better have leveled up your classes to get these. And it was replaced in Stormblood with roll abilities.
Are now just auto unlock roll abilities, attribute points that add.
Yeah, okay. Imagine these, right? Imagine these abilities, but you don't necessarily have them in content. Let's say you get duty finder of someone, and they just don't have this shit because they haven't leveled up the classes. And it's like, should they be required to? It's like, that's a bit of an ask to ask them, right? Like you can say, hey, do your job quest to get your main abilities, but you can't expect people to go and level up every class. Again, unless you've played 12,000 hours over 6 years, and then you can kind of get that idea that that's what people should be doing. But no, many people do not want to level up multiple classes, and it's also a massive barrier to entry to be like, yo, you want this thing? Yeah, go back and do all this stuff. Go and play a class that you might actually not like just to get an ability you need.
Roll abilities, attribute points that added.
Okay, I saw this also memed on. So this is an old system, very, very old, as you can tell. When you leveled up, you used to get points that you could allocate into your skills. Oh, cool. But you see here, it's just the 6 primary stats. So for example, he's currently got a Scholar on the screen, right? So what do you put his stats into? Mind. That's it. In fact, this bit here, putting 19 into Intelligence, 11 into Mind, that's weak shit. Get rid of that. You go all into your main stat or nothing. There's no actual decision making here. You just go all into your main stat. Right? Like, that's why it was taken out, because it's a dumb system that actually doesn't have any variety in what you do. And all it actually did was it forced scholars and summoners to have to constantly buy an item that reset their stat allocations, because this was on the class, right? So it was assigned to Arcanist. So if you're a scholar and you're like, oh man, I want to raid as a summoner tonight, you got to redo all your points into intelligence. So you got to go buy the item, reset your stats, reassign them, swap over to summoner. Now you can do it. It's a good thing this system was gone, and it was terrible when it was implemented. Right? This is rose-tinted glasses for a system he never had to interact with.
another layer of growth while leveling your character by giving you extra stats are gone. I mean, Jesus Christ, every expansion is just another round of wait and see what they delete this time. Ugh. Misshapen Chair made a video going in depth about how the dumbing down of class design is removing interest for veteran players, and I want to say that these changes don't help new players either. The greatest strength a game can have is being a game that is easy to learn but difficult to master.
Again, this is why the jobs are easy to learn. The raid designs are meant to be hard to master. That's the trade-off that they've done. And it's been highly successful because a lot of people have jumped in this game who would have been absolutely filtered by Heaven's Ward job design, right? You know, doing Stormblood job design. It was not welcoming at all to players that were more casual.
What happens when the game is easy to learn and easy to master? You know, as veteran players, we often have to huff copium by saying that, well, the game isn't made for us. It's made for new players, and us veterans are just marketing tools to get...
I mean, it's funny he shows this while showing off the Epic of Alexander. Like, this is what this... There's an ultimate raid that was specifically made for, like, the top-end raiders. It's specifically for the hardcore of the hardcore players. Like, yeah, this game does cater to you. You know that, right? And you're still like, oh no, it doesn't cater to me enough in new, interesting ways that I don't know about.
New players to try the game. But that doesn't last forever. There isn't an infinite pool of new players you can constantly bring in. Eventually, those new players become veteran players too, and they...
I mean, they don't necessarily. No. Like, there is a bunch of people that just are completely content to stay at a certain level, right? Like, you have some people dipping their toes into extremes and savages, but there's different levels that people are comfortably getting to. That's fine.
Realize all the problems with the game and end up logging out for the last time. What happens when there is no more new players? Topic 4. Who is this game made for? Every simplification, every deletion of a system, every dumbing down of an interesting mechanic has always been seen as making the game more approachable. My question is, with this never-ending crusade of making the game easier and easier without ever expanding the available content...
Again, making the jobs easier and easier, but not the fights. Although they're showing Zeronemus here.
Or adding on to the existing gameplay formula, what is the end?
See, and like Zeronemus, again, with extremes, they've always gone a little bit all over the place with difficulty. Sometimes they're like, we want to design a bit more of a challenging fight. Sometimes we're like, we want to have a good entry level in for new players who have never done an extreme before. I think Zeronemus was quite a bit on the easier side for that, which is good because it's at the end of an expansion. So it's when you have the greatest lull period of time, you can get people into that.
Goal for Final Fantasy XIV. Everything I loved about the game has either been removed or dumbed down to the point of being menial. As someone who...
I know. Yeah, I could say the same thing about Old Diadem. Oh, removed forever from the game. Rip. Just kidding. No, nobody liked Old Diadem. Nobody. It's a terrible system.
Got into the game for the unique class design and amazing raid encounters, I've had to sit and watch as all the interest in class design was slowly whittled away, making every class dull and homogenized. I've had to sit and watch as all the creativity in raid design slowly evaporated.
Again, creativity in raid crime. It's like the creativity has gotten even better. Even better since Stormblood. They've gone up and above, right? But again, he didn't play Endwalker. He didn't play Endwalker, which is why this is not his footage. So he doesn't know. He's just speaking purely on what he's seen other people do.
Separated into a mishmash of reusing the exact same mechanics for years on end. And if the trend continues, at some point, your favorite features will end up being dumbed down or deleted. So what is the end goal here? Who is the game made for? Cat moms who play 1 hour a month and spend that entire time crying because the pixels on the screen said a sad word?
I mean, that's hurtful, right? Like, why say it like that? Why do it like that?
Leveling roulette mains who spend the entire expansion leveling classes that they will have no use for at max level? Roleplay mains who don't even do any content at all and spend their sub money dancing at player-made clubs?
Yeah.
Look, I'm not trying to shit on those kinds of people.
I mean, he is kind of shitting on those people, though. Like, he absolutely is. But this is another thing of, like, an MMO is made for a whole group of people. Again, he didn't even mention PvPers, right? Because I'm like, yo, they were eating pretty well this expansion. It's meant for a whole wide variety of people. That's MMOs. If you start to cater too much specifically to one group, you alienate the rest of the groups, right? Like WoW has done this over time, where WoW has gone far more into raiding is all the content in there, with a little bit of PvP off to the side. And it's like it's found its mark in there, but the people who aren't into that don't play WoW, right? Like the people who want a more social game don't play WoW. They go over and like, oh shit, 14's better. The people who want to do like a lot of relaxing fishing, like, oh man, the fishing in 14 is wild. People who want to do spreadsheets like me, crafting, amazing stuff. Then there's like house decorating and things like that as well. You need a wide variety of content to get a lot of people in the game.
What if that's who the game is targeting? Then why even bother making high-end raids? Why even bother adding?
I mean, because they also want to get people doing high-end raids. Like that's the thing about it. The problem with this is, like, let's say he got his wish, right? Let's say that the game went all in on high-end raiding. Could the game sustain itself with that many players? Like, could the game sustain itself if the population would just suddenly cut to 1/3 of what it was? At least on JP. On NA, it's closer to like 15% of the people who actually clear the Savage raids. Could it sustain itself with that population? Could it keep pumping out the content that people want like this on that schedule? I'm like, I'm not so sure. Not so sure. Right? You need a wide variety of players.
New classes to the game. Why even bother with anything but
Otherwise,
the
why
MSQ?
even-
The point I'm trying.
Why even make it an MMO? Right? Like, I've seen this as well now. We've got, what's that game? Fellowship. It's like, hey, we've basically made a game that is just purely WoW's Mythic Plus, but as its own separate game. And it's kind of pretty popular. I've seen some good things about it. Because, like, people don't really care much about many of the systems in WoW. They just go all in on the raiding. So you have a game that also takes the raiding and it's just like, yeah, we've gone all in on one very specific Mythic Plus system. Don't have to bother about the big large scale raids. No, just Mythic Plus. And everyone's like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting. Okay, I'm intrigued. Yeah, let's go to that.
Trying to make is that on top of catering to the cat moms, the leveling roulette mains, and RP enjoyers, the game used to cater to everyone. It used to.
I mean, it still does. It still does. until we get an expansion with no ultimates, I think it's disingenuous to be like it doesn't cater to raiders, right? We got a little bit of that in Shadowbringers, where they're like, due to COVID and delays and things, we're going to have to delay DSR. And people are like, oh, this game only caters to casuals. It's like, you still got T. You still got T, and then you got DSR and top and endwalker. You're still getting the content. But I think when you say catering, you mean more like, I want to be the main target of everything. I want more content made only for me, to the detriment of other content enjoyers. Like, that's not going to happen.
Cater to the high-end raid enjoyers who wanted in-depth class design to master and theorize how to maximize on a fight-by-fight basis. It used to.
I think it's funny because, like, yeah, okay, theorizing is something that some people do, yes. It's also one of those things where I'm like, you're just going to go to the balance. You're just going to check out the balance Discord for many of these things.
To cater to the mid-core, semi-invested players who wanted a goal to chase with relic weapons. It used to cater to people who.
Okay, say I could do a whole video about endwalker relics and how they're actually designed. But I'd also think it's funny that even in this video he calls it mid-core when like, now we know, right, from patch 7.15, it's like internally they consider mid-core to be chaotic. It's a very different thing. And it's always funny when people keep being like, oh, we kept asking for more mid-core content and then they gave us chaotic. And it's like, people are like, that's not what we mean by mid-core. You need to be precise about this. What is mid-core? Is it a skill ceiling or is it a time commitment?
actually wanted a game to get invested in and master. on top of the new players, the casuals, and Twitter spamming Graha.
Again, he's like, I'm not saying anything negative about these people, but he's definitely saying things negative about these people.
Tia Sims. But it's not that way anymore, and I just don't know who the target audience is for this game. I don't know if Square Enix just wants you to simply play the patch by coming back once every 4 months to complete all the new content in 4 hours and go, oh, that was cool, I guess, and then log out for 4 more months. It doesn't seem that way with how...
No, it is kind of that way. It is kind of that way. Like, Yoshi has been pretty upfront about, like, yo, take breaks from the game. Take breaks. Play other games. You don't need to log in if you don't have content on things you want to do. Right, it's fine.
Slow the gearing up process takes, or the...
I see the slow gearing progress. It's also one of those things where, like, it's so raider focused, right? Raiders are like gearing up my mains and gearing up my ult jobs and things. Like, how long does it actually take your average player to gear up one job? One job. Like, it's not that long. I don't know why people want the game to be balanced around gearing up multiple jobs. That's just going to make it a lot less... there's going to be a lot less incentive to do content for the people that just gear it up once. Alright? It's a balancing act. Same with the relics. It's like, how do you balance things between people who want to just do the one relic versus people that want to do multiple relics? It's a hard thing to balance.
Hooks they have to keep you resubbing with things like the auto demolition timer for housing.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Did you know that the demolition timer was actually a community feedback feature? As in, it was something the community asked for. I know, it's like monkey's paw, right? Is that they made this wish way back in the past for something, and now they are going to forever complain that it exists. But yeah, it was a feature back in the day, because when housing awards first came out, they were actually free company only, which I'd be honest, I think they should have stayed that way. And you did have more people in the wards actually just sitting around and doing things, because it was a free company, so you had a lot of people around the houses. And what they wanted is, people were complaining like, oh, there's a bunch of places now that are empty, right? Because the people aren't playing anymore. They're taking a very extended break, and these wards are feeling lifeless. Can we have some kind of way that it removes the house at a certain point in time? So that's how we got the demolition timer. It was a community feedback item, because it wasn't in the game from the beginning. Which is also why I think it's interesting that WoW says they're not going to have that feature, because I'm like, how are you going to stop dead wards? But alright.
Where you can't take a break longer than 45 days, but if they want us to continue playing week after week, paying our monthly $15 entry fee, then...
Again, the entry fee, it's the fee you pay to play the game. It's not for the content. Not for the content, it's just the right to play the game.
Why are they removing all of the interest and challenge for players who do spend a large amount of time playing the game? I don't subscribe to the idea that making everything easier and simpler ends up keeping new players invested for longer. In fact, I think it's the opposite.
Again, this is disingenuous, because it's like, it's not about... It's keeping the job simpler to incentivize players to actually learn them and not hit that wall where they're like, this is too confusing, not going to play the game. You want them to get invested for long enough that they can get to further into the game and get more invested. That's why the free trial lasts so damn long now. And then the actual difficult content comes more from the raiding, when you want to step into that.
I think expanding the available content, keeping a high skill ceiling for players to master, and constantly creating unique encounters to genuinely challenge your gameplay ability gives players a reason to play the game more than the required 4 hours a patch. I used to think that all the simplification to class design would mean players would have an easier time getting better at the game, so they could tackle harder content.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it wasn't so they could tackle harder content. It was so that they could actually make it through the game, right? And so they can be better in your average content. Again, this one is like rose-tinted glasses. This guy doesn't remember ARR and Heaven's Ward, right? He doesn't remember how bad it was.
But, as I'm sure all of you know,
pines for better
even in
times,
FF's
he was not part
easiest
of.
state of all time, People in roulettes are still terrible at their classes. People in party finder groups are still floor magnets that do 1 DPS. And again, I'm not trying.
I mean, that's not gonna change though. Except on JP. Yo, JP is really, really good for the raiding scene. So much better. But again, this is an interesting thing. Like, that's not necessarily the game design, because again, different servers have different clear rates for things. That's kind of more the general culture of how you approach things. That's a lot harder to change.
To shit on these people. My point is that if someone doesn't have an interest in taking that step into the world of playing well and learning to optimize, then they just won't. No amount of simplification, homogenization, and dumbing down or deletion of systems is going to make Johnny Two Fingers become a good player. It just makes the...
See, this is what I think is wrong. Is like, what do you mean by good player? Like, not everyone should be on the road into Extremes and Savage. Again, there's breakpoints for everyone where, like, people are fine to be just doing the dungeons, right? And to be a good enough job in the dungeons without having to worry about, like, cleric stance or stance dancing or the old card system that Astro had, or TP that melee players used to have. It's fine.
Game less interesting and fun for those of us who want to spend a little more time on the game and get a little more invested. And this is the crux of everything I've said. The path Final Fantasy XIV has been going down does not tangibly improve the game for new players, because eventually they too will become veterans.
No. See, that's the thing. Not everyone becomes veterans. Some people are fine with staying at a certain level. Always.
And reach a point where there is no more challenge or interest in the game for them.
That's like saying, like, every game needs to in some way cater to speedrunners, because everyone who plays a game will eventually become that good that they become a speedrunner. It's like, no, different skill levels. It's fine to have a point where players are just good enough, right?
This game that I gave 12,000 hours of my life to and 6 years of enjoyment has taken away everything I once enjoyed about it. I just want the game I once loved to be good again. It has been in the past, and I desperately hope it will be in the future. Thanks for watching.
You know what I think is so funny about this is he ends the fight on UCOB. And it's like, you look at UCOB compared to DSR or Top or even Through, and it's like, look at the actual fight design of the old raids compared to what they have been able to do in the more recent ones now that they've simplified the job systems. Like, they have made the jobs simpler to make the raids so much more complex. And I just think ending on a video on UCOB and it's like, this is considered easy content now. They haven't changed the fight. Like, UCOB hasn't changed. But now that the jobs are easier, this whole fight is easier. Right? Uwu has changed a little bit because, you know, we have the weird Garuda strats and things. And it's like, but Uwu is considered a long extreme by today's standards for difficulty. It's not difficult at all. But again, it was ultimate back then. It was ultimate when the jobs were more complex. You take a Stormblood job and you throw that at DSR or Top, they're never clearing that. They're never clearing it. But yeah. Anyway, that's the end of the video. That's the end of my long-ass rant. Thank you all for watching. And remember chat, stand still and let things resolve.